Once upon a time, two curious adventurers set out through Africa on a wondrous journey of exploration and discovery.
So welcome to Exploring Life on the Uncomfortable Edge. My name's Dr. David Gwyn Evans, and I have here the lovely Bean Shireen Young, and she'll be joining me on our expedition to the hinterland of Africa. Yes, you're right. She's also the conscience that sits on the shoulder. She says, and Chris, and Sarah, and all the people, the farmers and the people that introduce us and the communities that welcome us in on our trip and that we meet. So without further ado, let's begin. My NGO is Casabio.org, and for more than 20 years, I've been attempting to set it up for one amazing use. And that test use is going through Africa and visiting the mountains of Africa, because these are the areas that I love. The plants are the plants that touch me in my heart. So Casabio is an organization that touches people's hearts through pictures, because the heart is the organ of love. And if we love something, we're more inclined to protect it. And that's what we are needing going forward into the future. And I'll touch on why. I wish to thank the CSIR, who are providing the infrastructure, the computer infrastructure for Casabio. So all the storage goes to CSIR, through CSR. So thank you. Now, those of you from the Cape, and those of you who know what Fynbos is, welcome, welcome to the Restios. These are the Cape sedges, the Cape grasses. No, I can see you're bored already. Psy, Protea cineroides, the king protea. It's the only protea with a petiole, that's a leaf stalk, so you can always recognize it from that. Yes, exactly. He's asking me a technical question, so I'm avoiding it. The other characteristic of the Fynbos is ericas. So we've got Restios, Proteas, and ericas, and they make up the Cape floristic kingdom, the major components of the Fynbos region that is the most diverse Mediterranean region on the planet. That was, can you stand up here, please?
Me?
The embodiment of Atlas holding up the earth on his shoulders. Please. This is Dinko, a fine friend of mine. Look at that. Look at those shoulders. Very tough. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So this is Stavia doddi. And what I want to start with is the Fynbos have got a whole lot of families, not just species, not just genera, but whole families that are endemic to the Fynbos. And one of those families is the Bruniaceae, characterized by having little black points known as macrons on the tips of the leaves and even on the petals themselves. So these are actually bracts, but you can see the tiny little flowers of the compound inflorescence on the inside. And that's got innumerable species, but one species is confined to the Cape Peninsula, to Cape Point itself. So this is the concept of endemism. So a species that is confined to just one place. Another endemic is the species is the genus that I studied for my PhD. It's the genus Hermania. And this particular species, Hermania distica, has a very rough texture and is only known from Montague. So there's Montague, the yellow spot along the Cape Fold Mountains, the Langeberg, and you'll notice there's another point up north. That is Leipold's grave, and there's a Hermania that was said to be Hermania distica from there. Now I know you people are intelligent and you go, an endemic from Montague, 200 kilometers away in the Cederberg, Can it be the same? Well, it has a number of differences. It has these angelic wings, and it has hairs that are very different, and a flower that's different. So, as soon as I saw this in the herbarium, I said, I'm going up there, and it took me a while to find it, but it's confined to the area within 100 meters of Leopold's grave, found nowhere else on the planet. And this is the kind of specialness that draws me and keeps me entertained with the genus Hermania, a genus, when I started my PhD or master's, was only 180 species. Then, through doing amazing scans using a scanner, I was able to take that up to 400 species. So a doubling of the number of new species. Thank you. Thank you to Hermania. Thank you. Take a bow, Hermania. Thank you. But this is not new. There are people out there who are doing the same thing. They're discovering double, 3 times the number of species. I was with someone a few days ago who was doing the same thing with Frankinia, taking it from a handful of species in Australia to more than 40. So look and you shall find is the motto. Here's Triclyceris. And what I love about this is the flower color. How's that for flower color? An astonishing navy blue. That's the bearded Nemesia, Nemesia barbata, and it has a single spur at the back. And what the hell is going on here? A dark flower. It's almost a deep, deep brown or maroon color, and the spur at the back is notched, so almost splitting into 2. What pollinates it? Does anyone here know?
A rat.
A rat. You're jumping the gun. I don't know, but what I do know is that there's a special group of bees that pollinates Diascia. Now look at these things resembling some masculine appendage. I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you that they are characteristic and unique for each species of Diascia. And what's even more fascinating is that there's a group of bees called the rediviva bees that are specialized for a particular reason. They put their back legs into the spurs, or pouches in this case of the Diascia, and they extract from it a very special substance. Who knows what that is? Peter, not you. Who else knows? It's not nectar, it's oil. Oil's very rich, as you know, in energy, and they feed these oils from the flowers to the little pupating bees. And these bees grow up strong on their oil. But the adult bees have to put their legs through that tube. Now take a look at that tube. Isn't that incredible? And Hubert Kurzweil of Missouri Botanic Garden, I think, he found that Singapore now, thank you, James. He found that each species of Diascia had its own unique bee, rediviva bee, with legs matching the flower that pollinated it. So he discovered many new species in that study. And in this case, the bee has to splay its legs out. So it's the individual species vary. Some are very small, confined to particular areas like the West Coast. Other ones are quite widespread. And they go all the way up through Africa. Now, does anyone know what this is? This is Hemimeris. Very good, James. And Hemimeris has a variety of pouches on it. And using the scanning system, I've managed to compile multiple species. Now, there's only about 7 species known. And there's a lot more than 7 here, especially considering that this isn't all of them. But can you spot the one with the beard? It looks like an old man, beardy man. Middle-ish. They've got eye spots and things like that. So,
which one is it there?
No, there's several there. There's several for you to pick out. You have to use your imagination, Michelle. I don't give answers, only questions. But a big question is that of what pollinates Witzenia maura. So maura meaning black. Look at that flower. You know the answer to this one. That's not the pollinator, that is the Bokmakiri, after which the flower is named because of the black and yellow. And what I found during my honors is that those flowers reflect UV, the yellow parts of it. Guess what happens with the black? They are like a mirror to ultraviolet. And so as the bird's flying along, it sees a sparkle of black of ultraviolet, and it then flies towards it and uses the yellow, the more diffuse ultraviolet, to navigate to the flower. And it then sticks its beak all the way as far as it can down the flower. So there it is in azione, and there's another pollinator. And it uses its tongue, because what I didn't realize at the time is that sugar birds have got a brush-like tongue, which they extend out, bring in, and squeeze into their beak, and thus, like a mop, they're able to mop up the nectar. And sunbirds have a straw. I'm not a tongue roller, so I can't demonstrate, unfortunately. But Rowan Atkinson, thank you. I don't know if that is a compliment, but thank you. No, he's an amazing man. So it uses its tongue to reach the nectar at the bottom. And this species, Watzinia maura, is confined to very particular areas. You see those yellow, you see those red spots? The yellow spots are perennial seepages, but not just through the year, through tens of thousands and even millions of years. The red ones are areas that have been impacted by development, and they are now extinct. So we've lost genetic structuring because each population spreads out during the cooler periods and then is confined to these perennial seepages when it dries out, which we're now experiencing, the drying climate. And there's a threat to these species. Drilling threatens these internationally protected floral species, and Adam West from UCT picked up on this. And there they are drilling in Kuchelberg. Tony Ribello, in his study of the Proteus, found it to be the richest area of the whole of the Cape Floristic Kingdom. And guess where we're drilling? Into these zones, these aquifers for water. That's a really dangerous thing to do. So why is it so dangerous? Because if you see the plants dying out like they are here, the seepage drying out and dying out, what does one do? Do you stop abstracting? But now people are relying on the water supply. So they're bird-pollinated flowers. They often have red flowers. And the marsh rose is confined to the Kuchelberg and surrounding regions, only to the wet areas, as that name marsh suggests. And that's a member of the Proteaceae, completely different to all the rest of the proteas. Mimetes is another one that there's 3 species confined to the Kuchelberg, the area that's being abstracted. This one's named after it. This is Mimetes hotentoticus.
I think David Lemaitre was doing a study of the varied levels of impact of drilling, and certainly didn't include those upland zones at all. So
it's very difficult to tell how those are connected. They're very intricately connected and fractured. And if you're abstracting from the top of a bath, it's got to leak out. It's got to come out somewhere. So, microloma. That's the plant that's in this model's hair, and it's a real beauty. And why am I showing you this? What's the sequitur? Guess what pollinates it? Red flowers suggest sunbirds. Anton Poe, about a decade ago, discovered the sunbird sticks its tongue into the flower, pulls out the pollinia, which clips onto the tongue, and deposits it in the next flower. So that was a really amazing study, and he got it into the very well reputed journal Nature. So there are amazing studies to be done. Let's go on to adaptations. How do these plants adapt? The ones you're seeing here are all annuals. So when it's heavily grazed and it's summer, those annuals die out in the summer. And when it rains, up they come, and they have a very short season. by which they can put out leaves, photosynthesize, put out flowers, and then put out seed as well. So it's an amazing thing that they do, but they do it in great abundance, and it's very patchy to do with the rain. This one, on the other hand, is the bushman's candle. Why is it called that? It has a stem that's kind of succulent, and it's so resinous that even if you light the live stem, it works as a candle. So hence the bushman's candle, maybe the Khoisan candle these days. But it's in profuse flowering in Namaqualand in this picture. The other way is to store the water in your leaves. So here we are, and these are the mesons named after mesos, middle. So middle of the day, because that's when they flower. You see, full sun, they're flowering now. This is Dracophilus. Sounds like a magical incantation. Dracophilus means the dragon lover. Why is it called that? Because this thing emerges at night. And here we have a picture of the Dracophilus dealbatus and the dragon spraying flame around these plants. Some of the leaves are stored in, some of the water is stored in the cells of leaves, like these seedlings just starting to come up. Oh, Adam, I know you love it. This is the sweet and delicious Diplosoma lukhoffi, and it resembles a delicious treat. But what do you do if the light is too much? The answer? You retreat. And further, I say. There we go. The little leaves are just poking out of the ground, and there's windows on the top of that. And the photosynthetic cells are held in that tube heading down. So this is fenestraria, meaning a window. Welcome, welcome to the amaryllis. This is an Amaryllidaceae, and it is a family which stores its energy and its water underground. And in autumn, it flowers when there's very little competition for flowering, for pollinators, because pollinators come in spring. It's springtastic. There's flowers everywhere. Pollinators come in winter. But it's a very difficult time to put out flowers in summer because you need to conserve all your water, which is why the Amaryllidaceae are specialists in it. Yeah. Striatus. Something striatus? No. Try again.
Oh, sorry, Hessia.
No. Stromaria striata. There we go. Now, this is an iridaceae, and I'm going to show you a few different ones. This is a Laperosia. And here's an Aristea with beautiful little windows. Very strange coloration to those windows. This is a Spiraxis. It's from Nivotville. Elegans from Nivotville. And I just love that. It's doing a little dance, isn't it? With those anthers. Moving away to the Colchicaceae. This is Androsymbium now. What's Androsymbium now, James? Colchicum, exactly. So this is Colchicum, and it's men in a boat, if you can see that.
Sounds like cold chicken.
So what I've been showing you are the monocots. And the very epitome of the evolution of the monocots, if you want to go down that route, is the orchids. And this is Bartholina. Marco, I'm saying that for your benefit so you can understand me. Ferraria is an iridaceae. And what pollinates Ferraria? Flies. Flies love to get in there. And if you look in one of those flowers, it's buzzing with those flies. And they kick each other out. They fight for space in there. So, Shireen, do you want to do your thing?
I don't, my love. You missed my thing.
Oh, no.
That's got a really big
big bladder and makes a super loud sound.
Perfect. Mwah. Thank you, Shireen. So this is Bulacris. This is one of the bladder grasshoppers. And it's really intriguing. It makes a very loud noise towards evening. And how it makes that incredible noise is with these little ridges at the bottom here. And it plays it like a violin. That's called stridulation. But it uses this big bladder as a drum to expand the sound. And that's the secret to making it loud. But there's another reason it has that big bladder. What's that? Containing semen. Why has it got so much semen? It loses its mouth parts as an adult and feeds off the energy of the semen. And after copulating, turns over and dies because it has no more energy. So isn't that an intriguing strategy from an insect? I like the eyes of this flower. But this is no ordinary flower. This is Craterostigma. And Craterostigma is the resurrection plant. It dies out during the drought. And when rain comes or water comes within a few hours, greens up, fleshes out, and becomes what you see there. And there's a different species of it. The Utricularia, meaning a bladder. Why? Doesn't look like a bladder to me, nor you, I'm sure. But it holds a secret. This is not my photo, I must confess. But that device there is a bladder. And it's a specialized root structure which has a vacuum in it. And when one of those little hairs is triggered, it sucks in the offending little insect or little zoo plankton that runs around in the water, and then it closes the trap. It doesn't have digestive enzymes. So what happens is the bugger dies eventually, and then it sucks out the cell, resetting the trap, creating that vacuum again, and getting the nutrients. So that is a carnivorous plant. Do you know another carnivorous plant? What's that? Yes, what's the common name for Drosera? Sundew. Look at those little sparkles there. And if you're a pollinator, you want to make sure that you're not getting caught by those leaves because those tentacles curl up. Let me show you a curly tentacle. Those tentacles curl up and they engulf the hapless insect. But, this is no small Drosera. This is the king Drosera, Drosera regia, and it's the largest of the Droseras in the whole world. And it's right here in South Africa, in the Cape. And it also occurs in one of those wet areas. So it's got flowers that are high up, away from the leaves, and that's its side. You can see it almost at shoulder height, in amongst the restios in the wet areas. And it's confined to a very small area. Say again?
Broadly speaking, where was the regio found?
Oh, I can't tell, but Baines Kloof.
Yeah, around that one.
There's a very special person in the background. You might be able to see who that is. Stuart, stand up, give a bow. That's Stuart Hall, amazing botanist. And it's an honor to have you here, Stuart. So, what about this? Is this a Drosera? Drosera needs water because those glands need a lot of water to stay hydrated and sticky. But Rorigula doesn't occur near water. At least the one species in the Cederberg. There's two species, one confined to the Kuchelberg area and one from the north in the Cederberg. And that's the amazing flower of this thing that's quite strange in its relationships. It's only recently been elucidated as to what its closest relative is. Do you remember, Peter? The old ticker's forgotten. But it's very surprising. So they're the flowers of it. And what is extraordinary about it is that this is not a prey. Can you see that insect? That is a assassin bug. It's an assassin bug, Pamaridae. And this assassin bug has material on the outside of its skin that allows it to go between those tentacles and not get stuck to it. And thus it sucks out the juices from the insects that are there. And one of the species also has a spider that's endemic to it. Now, I'm going to pose you a question that I would love you to answer. And that is, how does the spider survive a fire? Nobody knows, but, where is it, Shireen? There's a prize up for grabs. Whoever can answer it gets one of these. Preemptively, you love roses, there you go. A prize. One for you. Anyone with a cough? There you go. Sarah, very good. Okay. Prizes all around, I say. Okay.
But how does it survive the fire though?
I don't know. I don't think anyone does.
And it's surrounded by water.
It's not in watery environments. It gets totally burnt down and nuked. So one thing might be it burrows underground, but it's not known. That's for us to discover. Mysteries of the veld. So talking of mysteries of the veld, what pollinates this Larileachia, known as the Hondaballs? So those are the flowers of it. There's a different species. And it's the same thing that pollinates this. And anyone who's got their nostrils close to this flower will know it's pollinated by flies.
To comment on Yashelt, it resembles a rotten meat. The flowers resemble rotting meat or smeared anus.
Thank you, James. Talking of which, rotten meat. What is this? This is a very extraordinary thing. It's a Hydnora, and Hydnora abyssinica from Ethiopia. And this species is pollinated by flies. Amazing, isn't it? Those structures, which I elucidated today for those on Instagram on @TheNakedBotanist, will find close-ups of the different parts of it. And it's quite extraordinary, the sophistication to which this plant has gone to trap insects in it. And it's got these large nectar chambers, which will be even more apparent in a later picture. So, talking of flies, we have birds' tongues. This is Ornithoglossum, and the flies suck up the nectar from these birds' tongues. So that's a little bit of etymology from you. Ornitho, bird, glossum, tongue. And this is Liparia. Now, what pollinates this? You'll notice it's yellow, hint of red.
Sunbirdie.
Brilliant, Michelle. Here you go. Lozenge sweet. So, that is Liparia splendens. Isn't that an evocative name? Much more evocative than Liparia parva, which means small. So here's the diminutive Liparia parva, which is not pollinated by sunbirds, but rodents. This is endemic to Cape Point, and it's rodent pollinated, much like this protea. Witzenbergiana, but that's actually a bit of a hybrid that was found in the veld. You heard it from me first. So, what pollinates this? Did you know there are orchids pollinated by rodents too? This is Satyrium pumilum, which means small as well. And there we have the much bigger Mistropetalon Tommy. And
Pollinated with their like little things, with their little paws or their hairs.
it's a good question. I think they put their schnoz right in there.
Yeah.
They get in there. They're not shy like you and I.
Yeah.
I think the clue is that all the flowers are low down.
Pardon?
The floors, see the flowers almost at ground level. They
So you go inside.
That's right. So when the rodents come to this, the flowers get totally messed up. They're not shy.
Yeah.
But I had a bit of a thing for this plant today. I put it together, and I pictured myself as a rodent going into the flower. And first of all, it's very dry and arid in the Renosterveld, which is where this thing loves to grow. So it catches on the wind a touch of scent. What's that I smell? Bread? Is there cooking taking place? So then it follows its nose, and eventually it comes to this cupule that's just protruded out of the ground like a newborn baby. And putting its nostrils inside, it gets directed and funneled down into this nectar cup at the bottom. But you'll see that there are some hairs. Can you see the hairs here? Those hairs stop insects from getting in, but they're no barrier for a rodent. So it gets its tongue into there and sucks out that delicious nectar, lapping it up. And there's a big chamber full of nectar there. So that is the parasite Cytinus sanguineus, meaning red, blood red. The earlier Hydnora abyssinica was found attached to one of these acacias. This is Acacia drepanalobium, and it's the whistling acacia. Why? Because attached to the bottom of my shoe is one of the said whistles. Those whistles have got long thorns on them, and they are the home to an ant, a female ant, a queen ant, and her brood is around her within this little nest, and there's hundreds of them on the acacia. So they have to climb up the stem to reach their home. So talking of ants, or what about this? Anyone know what plant this is? Very good, very good. You're going to run out of places to put these. There you go, Clive.
Thank you very much.
So this is Hermania erodioides. Its nearest relative is all the way in Australia. And there's only one species in Australia. And how is it there when what's distributing these seeds is ants? And look at how they grab the seed. Oh, it's very definite. There's the seed. So they grab the fruit, they drag it all the way from the plant to their nest, and there they place it underground where it's safe from predation. That's a commensalism, and if anything tries to take those seeds, guess what they do to it? Ha-ha! A termite much bigger than the ant is ripped apart, and it's holding on haplessly to the leaf. It's no good. So there's another bladder hopper, and it's stridulating organs again. But why I've shown this is because we're moving from the body to the head. Can you see the three little eyes there? Not the two on the side, the compound eyes, the simple eyes known as ocelli. Did you know that mantises have them too? I didn't, because not all mantises have eyes like this one. This is Harpaga mantis, which means hooked mantis, because it hooks its prey in. Harpaga mantis tricolor. And look at that head. Isn't it astonishing? It's got these two forward-facing compound eyes, and on the top of its head is a crown of ocelli facing in 360 degrees. Normally, the ocelli face up. These ones are arranged on the sides. And those ocelli alert it to a prey behind it, and then it can swivel its neck through 180 degrees. But the compound eyes, once it's fixed on it, the center of the eyes, known as the fovea, have got an incredible ability to resolve an prey or a predator, and to know what it is. And if it's within 2 centimeters, that's its sweet spot. And it can reach out at an astonishing speed and grab the prey. So, do you notice those little eyes? Have you ever noticed insects following you? Their pupils never waver. Why is that? Does anyone know? Right, what is it? It's not the pupils, he says.
Yeah, it's just pigmentation.
It's not pigmentation. They're like tubes. And if those tubes are facing you, you see down the length of it to the receptors, so it absorbs all the black. But if you look at the tube from the side, you see color. So I'm going to show you in a little bit a creature like this. So this is a crab spider, jumping spider. It's got 4 pairs of eyes, so 8 eyes in total, 3 on the side, and 4 that face forward. And those big eyes are amazingly good at resolving. They've got all kinds of incredible adaptations to the light. So one of those is the ability to shift the retina on the back of the eyes so it can stay still while following a moving object by shifting its retina. How incredible. It also has an amazing vision, yes.
So where was it taken? I mean, sort of an amazing species. Elon Musk is most intrigued, but where did you get these?
These pictures, I should credit my phone. It's one of the things I got, Shireen. I don't want to toot its horn too much because it's a Google phone, but I got this for our trip, so we can be sharing pictures, including macro pictures. So I took that the other day in Bergfleet. So yeah. They also have the ability to shift the cells at the back to allow more light in when it becomes nighttime.
Bergfleet Safari.
Yeah, the little guys. Don't forget them. So we have to, for a moment, make ourselves a little small to talk about slightly depressing things. And this is climate change, with our dear Donald Trump coming into power saying, drill, baby, drill. We're going to extract all the oil and gases and we're going to use it because America first, even at the expense of future generations. There's my rant. And why I'm bringing it up is because climate change is a contentious issue. Does it really happen? Well, as a botanist, I see the impacts of it. Here's the eastern Cederberg, and these plants are dying out big time. In the Richtersveld, over 75% of species are going extinct locally because of climate change. That's how serious it is. That's how severe it is. And yet, up in California, where they're experiencing these raging fires, they're debating whether climate change is a real thing and whether we really have to put America second. So this is Ed, this is Namaqualand, and here's an example of these poor little guys kind of keeling over. And this is the site of a study of the quercus. So I want to introduce to you the concept of a flagship species. Jackie, can you enlighten us?
Flagship. It dominates the bio, doesn't it? Like it's I don't know. You explained it.
No, you're doing good. It's an iconic species that represents something. So here we have an iconic member of the botanical fraternity. Here's an Adam Harrower in his car. And I won't show you the effect of that, but let's just say we got stuck for a few hours. But if you persist and you get up to the tops of the mountains, you see things like this. This is a daisy known as Oldenburgia paradoxa. Paradoxically, it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be a daisy. It looks like that shaving brush that I should have used today. And there it is. And these things are confined to the high mountains. So when the climate changes and they can't go any higher, because as you go up, temperature changes by 1 degree every 100 meters, which means that these plants have to shift by 100 meters to stay within their comfort zone. And if they can't do that through the use of seed and the next generation and finding a habitat that suits them, they go extinct. So we have a canary in the coal mine in the form of a Woodringtonia cedar tree. This is the widespread cedar. This is Woodringtonia nodiflora that's across the Cape. And when out expediting, I came across this. It's an earthworm that Earth knows why it glows in the night. That's its coelomic fluid that glows at night. And there's a whole family of these things that produce different colors, and each earthworm has its own unique signature. Why it has it, I don't know. It's surely not to attract mates, because they're blind, and they go at night, and they're underground, they're fossorial. So who knows? So we're about halfway through. If you want to stand and stretch, you want to take a quick... So those of you who are here, I would like to do a little exercise for a minute. I want you to settle down, and I want you to close your eyes. Close your eyes for a minute. And now I want you to picture yourself outside somewhere where you like. And as you're sitting there, realize that you can't move because you've grown roots, and those roots are going into the soil. And as you experience the heat, so you realize you're getting thirsty because you can't move. And you can't go to tap and get water. What happens now? Then night falls upon you and you start getting cold. You want to reach for a jersey, but you can't. There's no such thing as a jersey for a plant. And finally, coming your way is a mower. What do you do? What do you do to get yourself out of that situation? And open your eyes. The answer is you can't. As a plant, the only way you can survive a catastrophic incident is through the next generation, is through the seed. So this is something that I've been very passionate about. It's about protecting the road verges from mowing. And I just thought I'd do that as a little introduction to what it's like being a plant and the things that one has to do in order to survive the variances in climate, because you can only be in one place for your entire life's existence. These are little mosses. They have a relatively short life cycle, and they're part of the ancient plants that have survived for more than 300 million years. Those 300 million years have included 3 mass extinction events. These are huge catastrophes that has wiped out more than 90% of the species of entire taxa within life. So these are the hornworts related to those guys. And these little cups, these fairy cups, these are the liverworts. So they form the bryophytes, which are the moss relatives. And they've survived. This guy is one of the ancient angiosperms, the flowering plants, that's survived several 100 million years. So the mosses have survived more than 400 million years. The flowering plants started around 150 million years ago. So these are about 150 million years old. And another one that you might be familiar is this. What is this thing? Yes, the water lily, Ponegeton distachyios, 2 ranks. Can you see those 2 ranks there? And these make a rather delicious food when added to stew and a bit of nice meat. But in there's a little spider who's also made his nest in the Ponegeton. Can you spot him? Or is the 2 darn blurred? So, what a cool find. There's little webs all over the place. I was so amazed. I was out on a volcano in Kenya, Mount Suswa, and came across a little ephemeral pool. And there in the pool was this purple thing with a beautiful violet flower. Guess what this is? A Ponegeton. This is another kind of Waterblommetjie. And this thing is also one of the most ancient plants. So the theme for our trip, the botanical theme, is around Project Sky Island, and it's one of the keystone species One of the flagship species we're looking for are these ancient plants that have survived extinction events. Why? Because we're currently going through an extinction event of our own making. It's known as the sixth extinction. And these trees in the Cedarburg, so iconic of that area that we love going to, are dying massively. Let me show you just how much they're dying. Here's an example of a mature, majestic tree that's died. And when I zoomed into a photo and counted all the dead versus the alive ones, all those red dots were dead. There were 33 dead and 1 alive. Here's another one. There were 65 dead and 6 alive, and counting. Because with increased fire severity because of the dryness, with increased temperature, these plants are being forced up. And the only places where they're surviving, guess where? Tops of the mountains, just as we would predict if the climate's elevating. So these are serious things we need to highlight. If one goes across to where number 9 is in the map, that's the Baviaansberg. And that's where the Baviaan cedar exists. This is Widdringtonia schwartzi, and it's a beautiful thing. But it's endemic to those Baviaanskloof mountains. That's what the fruit look like. Now, what kind of tree is this? It's a cone-bearing tree. Fir means, so as in conifer, means bearing, and it bears cones. So this is one of the cone-bearing trees related to pines. And up here is a photo that was taken more than 10 years ago. Why? Because you can see adult cedar trees. This is Widdringtonia whitei, an endemic from Mount Mulanje in Malawi. So we're going to visit Mount Mulanje, a place I've never been. I've only seen from the foothills of it. But these are harvested to extinction, so a very different reason. And then this in the snow are the snows of Morocco. They're the Atlas cedars. Cedrus, Adam? Cedrus atlantica. And how are we getting there? Shireen. Tell us a little bit about what we've been through the last few weeks. Stand up.
I can assure you that this is definitely not what we're taking. We're taking a lot more. And we're going with a car. And she has a name, and she's getting a new alternator so that everything works really well. And it's been a really beautiful time of ordering, packing, deciding what's needed, working with the things we want to take but have no space for. It's been a really beautiful time. Yeah, I'll tell you more later.
Thank you. Sure. Mwah. She makes me blush. So one of the things, the new acquisitions, I've been shopping aplenty, and it's very necessary for this trip because this is our one chance to go and document these plants. So why is it our one chance? I probably won't get another chance myself. I may die en route, so it's definitely an important thing to send the pictures back home as I go and to share. And many of the dark places, the forests, need a flash. So it's a dedicated twin flash. I've got my Insta360 camera, busy filming, hopefully, which allows one to see in all directions. I've got a drone for following, and this allows me to see things from above and to get an overview of what these mountainous areas are like. GPSs, cell phones, what's it called, satellite link, the Garmin InReach, Starlink. Don't mention Starlink to me. They are not allowed in South Africa. Thanks, South Africa government. And they have turned off roaming so that you have to come back to your country of origin within 2 months. That entirely excludes a wonderful trip through Africa. So thank you for that decision, which makes no sense to me. Okay, so this was the pack out, the loadout for a motorcycle trip through Kenya. And there were all kinds of challenges for someone who's not particularly motorcycle adept, and admittedly who doesn't have a motorcycle license. So I learned the hard way what falling's like, and what washed out roads are like, and what really challenging downhill sections are like. What's this depicting? I came to the edge of a little cliff, and I thought, there's a really easy path. In fact, it's in the background, going down the back end. Or I can take this one that takes me along the cliff. Guess which one I chose? And as I got to the start of the cliff, my bike cut out. And I was like, oh, and I start easing over that way, and I'm like, no! And in slow motion, of course, I get my leg off that side, and I kick off the back of the bike, but I don't quite make it, and I'm falling, and it's a very high cliff. And I am I'm out from the bike, clinging onto the handlebars from underneath, and I feel the bike's landing on my leg. And as I do so, I'm like, oh my gosh, my leg's about to snap. But it was the backpack on the back of the bike filled with duvets that kept me safe. And my leg didn't break. All that broke was a few things on the bike, like the mirror and a few other elements. But I survived that fall off a cliff on a motorbike. So I'm pretty stoked.
We'll be taking backpacks everywhere.
So Shireen knows already what sort of person she's getting with. But if you survive this and you get up into the higher areas of the mountain, then you get to pitch a tent in a place like this. And this is Mount Kenya. And near the bottom, you've got those forests, those Afro-montane forests. And here's the largest tree of the forest. It's a kind of yellow wood. So one of the conifers that we are going to be tracking down. And you see that brown branch there. Why? Can anyone see why there is a brown branch there? Why is the tree starting to die? No, it hasn't been ring-barked. Why?
Too hot.
No. Do you notice what's next to the tree? A road. In order to allow the tourists to visit Mount Kenya's largest tree, they put a road next to the tree, which compromised the root system. Now, if you get slightly higher up, what is this, Adam? You can't see very well, can you? Yoshania alpina. This is the bamboo. I didn't even know bamboos occurred up there, but they form an entire zone which links into the tiny little bamboo from the Drakensberg. So that's amazing. If you get above the bamboo zone, you get into the rosewood zone. This is the Hygenia, which is a member of the rose family. So that giant bush on the left, those are the flowers of the rosewood. And it often has these branches that are covered in moss because it's quite a moist it's quite a moist zone. And in that zone occurs our first lobelias, our first giant lobelias. So there's one of them in the foreground. And there are hidden denizens that are watching over. It's a very magical part of the world. Take a look at that creature. They're wardens of the zone. And your socks freeze when you get above that because we're now in the zone that has the giant lobelias. So this lobelia has a very special way of handling what is a huge temperature range from day to night, something that most plants can't survive, but this one can. Its leaves curl up during the night, and in it, it stores the water. And that water acts as a buffer in freezing against the cold, and thus the plant's able to survive. And they're the flowers of it. So what pollinates this thing? Well, it's the same that pollinates this. This is Lobelia teleki. And I said to Shireen today, What does it look like? Do you remember Baba Papa, Baba Rama? Little like that. Yes! Thing from the Addams Family. So I wanted to put sunglasses on it and a hat, but I didn't get around to it, my apologies. But it looks like Thing from the Addams Family. And here it is, pollinated with its flowers made apparent because it's pollinated by a sunbird. I didn't even realize there were sunbirds so high up in Kenya. I don't think it's a Malachite sunbird. Do they occur up there, Paul? I think it's a different species of sunbird. I forget what it is. But it's not just the lobelias that are giant, which is one of the adaptations to this extreme of climate, but the synecios. And so fabulously large are the synecios that they're known as dendrosynecios, meaning tree synecio. So they're normally little shrubby things, but here they are dwarfing porrick. And there's porrick in a little pond. So up at the tops of Mount Kenya, there are these ponds, these lakes that hold endemic fish, and they're known as tarns, or tarns, T-A-I-R-N-S. And they are? Yes. We have a McDowell here. We have a Scottish man here to tell us who it's done.
What was the question?
How's it pronounced? Tern. So here's Mount Kenya with all these dendrosynecios at the base, and there is the tern. But next to the tern is porrick. Why is he holding himself like that? He's had a bad night. He's had too much to drink. No, it's altitude sickness. We're talking 4,500 meters here. And the oxygen is much less. So he's suffering. And not only is he suffering, but you'll notice this is a glacier. It's one of the last glaciers on Mount Kenya because these glaciers are retreating. And I have an old film, is that the term? I have an old slide of my granddad in New Zealand visiting this huge glacier. And I'd love to find out whether that glacier is still extant and how much it's retreated by. But apparently, this thing's going away. It's disappearing. Now, what are we looking at here? Any ideas? Crystals. What sort of crystals? Stalactites or stalagmites?
Stalagmites.
In a way, yes. What are they made from? Ice. So each night, underneath the sand, underneath the soil globule, an ice crystal grows and grows. And as it does so, it pushes up the sand. Now, because it's on a slight gradient, when that ice falls over, the sand's deposited lower down. So there's a migration down the slope, and that's known as solifluction. It's almost characteristic of those high areas. And solifluction means that the plants in that area can't get their roots in. And so it leads to a kind of dead zone for most things. But not Arabidopsis thaliana. This was one of the plants that we tracked down and were hunting for on Mount Kenya. And whereas lower down at 2,500 meters, we found it for the first time in a quarry growing about this size. It's Arabidopsis thaliana, the thale cress, and it's a member of the Brassicaceae. Brassicaceae being the broccolis and the cabbages. Very good, James. So, edible flowers, edible fruit, edible leaves. But it got shorter and shorter as we went up the mountain. So here's us scrambling up the slope, going up. When you don't have a ladder, this is how you do it. And there it is. We found the world's smallest Arabidopsis. They are so small that they don't even create a stem. The flowers come straight off the base. And what has happened is that the gene for coding for the stem of the flower has been eradicated from the genome. So it's just producing flowers. I'll show you later on something that has a different strategy. So, so this is a kind of daisy. It's related to thistles. It's a carduus. And this thing has serious protection. And it needs protection if it's to survive things like this herbivore. I'm talking rubbish, of course. But another thing with amazing eyes. And talking of amazing eyes, look at that flower. Doesn't it have amazing eyes? That is none other than delphinium. Delphinium, can you believe it? Daisy Corlon. And here's another one. Oh, what the crumbs? It's Delphinium macrocentrum, of course. And look at that. Oh, too beautiful, too beautiful. But what's even more amazing is you notice the slight color difference. At one altitude, it's sky blue. At another altitude, it's copper green. Look at that. We don't know why, but presumably it's some epigenetic thing. It would be wonderful to do a garden experiment. So take plants from one altitude and put them at the other and vice versa. I don't know. They would be, if there were, they would be at your house. So I'm ending this part of it because we're going into the trip itself. But this is a very large tree of something you wouldn't want to encounter unless you like living on the edge, Dinko. Why? Oof. It's the world's most prickly nettle. It's a tree nettle. Look at those things. They're huge. So we crawled through a cave, and there were these monstrous nettles, Obetia. So these are some of the perils we'll be negotiating during our trip. Now, handing over to Shireen. Can you go mic up, Shireen?
Sure, where do I do that?
That side there, as I set up. So we're going to go first to, I think, Shireen Maps to give an overview. Good?
Is it Chris? Really?
Huh?
Is Chris going to talk?
No, you're going to talk. But while we're doing it, let's introduce Chris and Sarah while you're miking up. Chris, Sarah, come forward. Yes, look at. These are two of our intrepid explorers, Chris and Sarah, and they are uncertain exactly what's going to be happening. I think the term is a religious experience, Chris, is that right? Because you're going on a lot of faith.
A lot of faith. A lot of faith, a lot of trust, but I know that you will be taking us to where we need to go. So, yeah, I'm Christopher, and I'm going to be providing a support role for David because he needs rails. Yeah, he spoke to me about a year ago. Just to give you some background, I live in my bucky. I've been travelling nomadically for 5 years, mostly in the Western Cape and most of the country. But I've never left the borders of this country without my car, without my buckies, with my buckies. So this is going to be quite a seminal trip, and very excited about it. And David is. We know he has a lot of skills and a lot of talents. I mean, clearly, for those of you who've only met him this evening, he has many skills, many talents, a great intelligence, and a great understanding. However, he's not the best cook, and let's just say, he has a gold card at Foodies. That's the retail, the expiry date stuff down in Musenberg down there.
Yes.
And Shireen actually, because it's been a whole process. It's not, you can imagine. And actually, Shireen, because this is the kind of woman she is, she's actually been through his house and said, David, this is going, and all the stuff in the kitchen has now been cleared. So my role here, among other things, is to make sure at the end of a hard day botanizing, David has a proper meal. And so what I'll be doing, apart from that, is giving him support and teaching him how to change a tire, how to bring your tires to the correct pressure depending on the terrain you're in, how to engage the right 4x4 gear on the right territory, on the right ground. And I'm sure he's going to do it very well. He's got a rig, which unfortunately is not here at the moment, but it's almost finished, and I actually saw it today, And I'm very excited for him to be doing this with me. And I've wanted to go through Africa, but I've always, there's no problem going through Africa, but you want to be with the right people doing the right thing. And I think with this wonderful group, I'm with the right people going to be doing the right thing.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Dave.
Yay.
So it sounds like a lot of immoral support. Talking of immoral support, Sarah, do you want to say a little bit about when you came on the journey?
A week ago.
Yay!
It was difficult finding the right person, I think.
So, well, I still had to decide a few days later. And I'm actually here to find out what it is actually all about.
It's plants.
Yes, I got that part.
So thank you for your support, boys and girls.
Absolutely.
And yeah, Chris is also going to be going ahead and making sure that the place that we're going is appropriate for the evening.
Yeah, so one thing that happens with botanists is that they're so single-minded focused, she can attest to that, can't you, Shireen? They're so single-minded focused that when they're in the field, they're just looking at the plants till sunset, and then it's like, all right, there's no more light. Right, what are we going to do now? And typically there's nowhere for them to sleep, or they'll just sleep there. So that's part of my job, is to make sure that we go somewhere. I've spoken to the farmer, we've got permission, we can wild camp on the property or wherever, or on the farm. So yeah, we're going to make sure he has a good night's sleep. So that's one rail, yeah.
What he's saying is I snore loudly. James, come on up. I want to introduce James. Yay. Now this is James Deacorn. Is that right? And James has been my erstwhile companion through how many years? 7 years, James?
No, it's more than 10 now.
More than 10 years.
About 15, I
and
think.
many thousands of kilometers.
Oh, yes.
Tell us one anecdote about my cooking.
Well, it doesn't change much.
What about that? I was hoping for something slightly more effusive than that. What about that time in the Cedarburg?
Huh? Oh, yes, there was that unknown oil you put in and none of us could eat it.
It was rancid oil. Probably.
Expired oil from foodies.
It was so disgusting, and it took 2 attempts to realize it was the oil at fault. So some of the trials and tribulations. But James's claim to fame is climbing over fences badly. So one of the things I like doing is like photographing from a distance to see if I can catch him mid-flight. And guess what I've got, James?
You didn't.
No, I haven't. I'm not so cruel. Thank you, James. Amazing botanist, James. Shireen. Shireen's here to tell us about Shireen Maps, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So while we're at it, let me just thank not just the CSIR and all of you for coming tonight. It's not an easy thing to come and drag yourself from your home of comfort, but to thank Forge Media for all they've done to film the stuff. They've given us a very good price and to film it and do such a good job. So all of the videographers, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So,
Yay!
Shireen, the route.
The route that we will embark on, I'm curious about how long it's going to take. There is James, there's a route. Isn't that fantastic? I know that we are starting in Cape Town, which is a good place to start because we are here. And then, yes, the only part that we are certain of. And then we are going to go to the Cedarburg. We're going Cedarburg.
We want to do a documentary on the Cedarburg Cedars.
Yes. Yes. And then it's a bit shaky from there, but I know I have family in Johannesburg that I really need to go and say goodbye to, and they actually need to meet this whole human being, as well as the others that I'm traveling with, which would be spectacular. And then we are going to go to Lesotho, and then we're going to make a mission through to, is it first going to be Eswatini and then Mozambique, or Mozambique then Eswatini, along that way? Yeah, and we're going to just mission and possibly getting very distracted, and this is why I'm so grateful for Chris. I'm going to be the person in the car trying to get us to where you're waiting for us. We shall see how that goes. But we'll do our best and be gentle and remind you. And then we're going to go all the way up. Help me, David, help me.
So this is part of the support that you'll be. Here we go, Shireen. We're heading up. I think they know which direction up is.
We're going up.
Through Malawi, we'll stay by the Lake of Malawi. Through to what happens in Tanzania?
Is that where my tree is? No.
No, that was Malawi.
Malawi was where my tree is. We are climbing. We're climbing lots of mountains.
Mount Kili?
Yes. That's what we're going to do. Oh, and there's also hot springs there. So after you're mid of a big climb and you're exhausted, you can go find hot springs and relax. No, this is in Tanzania. Yeah.
Gorillas or monkeys, gorillas?
We are
In
coming to that
Uganda?
later on.
Yeah.
And then we're going to head up through to Kenya, to Mount Kenya, and maybe to the mountains in the north of Ethiopia.
Maybe.
So from there, whistle stop tour back through. Where are we going from there?
There, that's the possible route we'll be going. The possible route.
Where's the mountain we're going?
Oh, yes, but that's in Uganda.
Well, that's what we're showing now.
Is that where we are? I see Ethiopia. Oh, coming down. Oh, right. Okay.
So we're going to the Ruwenzoris because there's the gorillas there. The gorillas in the midst. And there's also amazing mountains there which may have Arabidopsis. They've never been discovered from there.
Wow.
But based on the Arabidopsis turning up where I predicted it in the Drakensberg and on Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest 5 mountains of Kenya, and in Ethiopia, I predicted it would be in the Ruwenzoris Mountains, which it's never been found at. So from there, we're going to skirt around the DRC, which is super dangerous, to what are we visiting in the south of Angola?
Ooh. Well, which years? Well, which years? Yeah!
So we're visiting the Welwitschers.
Thank you, James.
And then we're heading up north. So we're reaching Cameroon and heading up Mount Cameroon. And from there,
All the way around to Morocco.
right. So what's happening in Morocco? What tree are we going for?
Yes, I'm pointing in the right direction. The Atlas cedars. But
Yes.
they're not really Atlas cedars. The real big word is Atlantis.
Atlantica.
Thank you.
Very good.
At least I
Someone's
know what
been listening.
direction from in the room it came from. Thank you, Adam.
Now, there's a question of whether we pop over Spain side or Italy side to get into Europe. But there's one Marco who's here tonight, and he's from Sardinia. And if we were to go your way, for example, could we come visit you in Sardinia? Sure. Absolutely. And tell me 2 amazing things about the Sardinian plants. Many endemic species to Sardinia. So I'd love to go there and experience that island. And then basically head to try and create and foment collaborations in Europe.
That's not Sardinia, you're going to the map.
Right. We're going through the map. Yeah, a little detour, small
It just
detour.
became the route.
Yeah.
Back one slide. What plants are you going to be tracking through Croatia?
Croatia, I wonder why you asked that, Dinko. So Dinko is not only Croatian, but a relative of Goran Ivanisevic. So, I loved Croatia when I went there, so I'd love to show Shireen Croatia. So that's why we're diving down there.
Botanical, it's just pure.
There's lots of botanical things there, I just don't know them.
Discovery.
Talking of America, which we weren't doing, but we're talking about it now, we're going to land in San Francisco, and in California is where we're going to pick up the Aptera. Now, those of you who are Greek scholars know Terra means winged. A means
without?
Not. You're right, it's a car. It doesn't have wings, but it's shaped like a wing. So I'll show you that in a few mementos time. But, Shireen, I haven't really told you about this part, so I'll take it from here if you don't mind.
Thank you, my love. I cannot wait to
With
see.
your permission.
Of course, yes.
We want to see the giant redwoods, so the
Yeah.
sequoia dendrons, the tallest trees on the planet. And they're up the north from California. They're also east of California in Yosemite. But we want to go to Yellowstone National Park, so that has to take us up north. And from there, there's just amazing places like Boulder, Colorado, and they're names that I'm just enchanted by. So we've got to come there. Why am I coming to California and Mexico, Shireen?
Hopefully we make it for the Day of the Dead celebration on my birthday.
Beautiful. Good enough
And
reason.
Why else?
4 species is the reason.
Oh, a botanical reason.
Hermania.
Ah.
The 4 American Hermania species.
I didn't know they'd
So
be in Mexico.
I've got to figure out why they're there and what they look like and find some, just so I can say I've seen them. And then
you
essentially
do
we're going to
have to
head
do
north
that.
in these electric cars, these Apteras, and visit areas like Washington, D.C., because we've got to convince these guys that Africa's worth conserving, that Africa's worth putting money into. Because it's amazing how when there's a war in Croatia, they're prepared to spend billions of dollars on weapons, killing. Yet they're not prepared to spend billions on survival. The largest project to date in the Cape Floristic Kingdom has been 10 million USD. That's the largest project to date. That's a minuscule amount compared to one bomb in Croatia. So, this is the Aptera vehicle. This is the electric vehicle with solar panels over much of it. And it's the world's most streamlined commercial vehicle. So this slips through the air, much like me if I was a car. And it's got 3 wheels, which makes it incredibly impractical for the potholes of Africa. But for the roads of America, it'll glide across those roads. So there's the interior of it, highly computerized, delightful seats, and look at that slipping off. Oh, it's gorgeous to look at. So I've reserved an Aptera, and they cost between $25,000 and $55,000 for the version that can do 1,000 miles on a single charge, which is 1,600 kilometers, and it gets 50 miles per day from the solar panels. So that's a very exciting acquisition that we reserved on. We are very nearly done. I want to just show you the country sites. So, Shireen, if you can take us through. So, have you got the folder? Country sites. Thank you. So, here's the trip going up through to Ethiopia, and we're here in
Zim. Aren't those the ruins?
the ruins
If
of
we
Zimbabwe.
get time, yes.
Oh, if we get time, we're going to make time to visit those ruins.
to see the ruins.
What's that?
There's
Chinoi.
also a cave.
Caves in Chinoi
Yeah.
with beautiful waters. There's the Chinoi caves in Zimbabwe as well. More of the great complex. Now, I mean, why are we visiting this? Because it's not just about plants. We're at the pinnacle of humanity. This camera here, or this lens, this camera, the GPS, we're at a singular point where we can document the plants in uncanny fidelity and share those with the world and the people of the world. We're at an incredible point. And thus, this Zimbabwe was the pinnacle of civilization within Africa at its time. So I think it's homage to our ancestors to go there. And I just look, I feel into what botanists and zoologists have done before me, what biologists have done, and the extent that they have self-sacrificed themselves for this bigger good, this greater good of knowledge, of furthering science. And it's not to be cast away. It's not to be trivialized, because all the knowledge that I can glean has been gained from my predecessors. So all the book knowledge, all the taxonomic knowledge. So this is a Lake Malawi, where we want to go, and some of the great baobab trees. Now this one, Shireen's got a particular penchant for. Why, Shireen?
Because this is the leper tree. This is where all the lepers went to die. I find that so fascinating.
And what's that picture of?
Of their bones.
It's the bones of the leper where they died. Lepers.
Yeah, they wanted to...
Not leopards.
Not leopards.
Maybe
people
as
who are
well,
ill. Yes.
but human
yeah,
leopards.
Yeah. I find it fascinating.
This is the Kemka Hot Springs. This is in Tanzania, where we're going to chillax.
After climbing. Yes.
Yeah. Ooh, look at that. It reminds me of where, Dinko? Croatia.
Oh, you mean the forests up north?
No, I mean the falls. There we go. There we go. What is this, Shireen?
It's a volcano.
It's a volcano. We love volcanoes.
Never been to one.
So this is Mount Oldonyo. And when I was in Mount Suzwe, there were these volcanic vents coming out with the sulfurous brimstone and this heat coming out. And it was like a steam. But if you fell into the hole, it was the doom and death of one. But around this, there was vegetation that could only survive where there was moisture. And that moisture was coming forth, ensuing from these vile holes. This is in Tanzania. And there it is from a different view. This is the Gede ruins in Kenya. And what's this, Shireen? Do you remember the name?
Hell's Kitchen.
Hell's Kitchen. I think we shouldn't go there. With my culinary skills and that landscape, I don't think we should be going there. But it is very beautiful.
We're not going there by motorbike. We'll be okay.
From Ethiopia to Cameroon, where's this, Shireen? This is the Ruwenzori's.
There we go.
And what do you see in that picture?
Are those the lobelias?
Those are the giant lobelias of the Ruwenzori's. So we'll be tracking those. And there's an erica on the left. Amazing to see. It must be Erica caffra. Yeah. It's a very widespread erica. And finally, the Mount Muhaburu volcano in Rwanda. And what's this, Shireen?
Oh, this is Bat Island.
Nyamunini.
Yes, let's say
Nyamunini. Bat Island. Look at those guys.
Just fruit bats everywhere. How cool.
So cool.
Wow.
And the final folder is Ethiopia and Dopi. And it's just a few pictures of that. I wanted to end off with Ethiopia, which has the Great Rift Valley. And why is this pertinent? Because on either side of the Great Rift Valley, there's more genetic variation than in hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers on one side of the Rift Valley. So if you go to a chain of mountains on one side of the Rift Valley, it's more similar than going 100 kilometers across the Rift Valley. Genetically dissimilar for plants and animals. So it means it's a very huge barrier for dispersal of plants and animals. So here we are in Ethiopia. And any idea what that is, Paul? Can you tell? Which one? Auger. Auger buzzard. There we go. Beautiful. It's a buzzard, but you can see it's highly grazed. And this is in the Ethiopian highlands where the flautist plays. And you'll notice that they're quite wrapped up. That's because it's cold at high elevation. But unlike a person, and unlike an animal that has all this fur, these are baboons from South Africa that you know and love. What are those? Those are the geladas. They're the only primate that is a grazer and a graminivore, eats grass. So this thing, what's it competing with? Goats, donkeys, sheep, it's competing with exactly the same thing that they eat. So it has a big distended belly because it has to process all that high carbon food. And it's a very special thing. It's in its own genus, or maybe even family. And this is also the home to the red hot pokers. Why am I bringing up the red hot pokers? Because it's the home of the Ethiopian wolf. Good guess. Ethiopian wolf. And the Ethiopian wolf is the first known nectarivorous mammal besides me. And that's because they were documented targeting these cnophophores for nectar. So amazing. And that's the incredible landscape up in Ethiopia, in the Ethiopian highlands. And it gets very rugged there. You can see the vegetation's depleted to almost nothing. And there is the mountain Ethiopian tar. Is that right? It's a goat that's endemic to Ethiopia that we're looking at. Oh, ibex, thank you. Thanks, James. Always the quicker one than me, not as old as me. James pointed out to me, you see he's very diplomatic, he pointed out a few minutes ago that when I return from this journey, I'll be 50. Thank you, James, for pointing that out. Here's a weird giant lobelia in Ethiopia. And what is this? This is a giant helichrysum that forms a mat, and that's how it survives the cold. Like that guy with the blanket, it forms a mat. So, this is the erica zone, and in amongst those ericas, there's all kinds of orchids. And it's here that we've got cedar trees. This is the pencil cedar, so one of those conifers that survive millions of years. And it's the same habitat where we found Arabidopsis thaliana. Look at that little guy. And here's showing you how low down in the laboratory, the low down form grows big and tall. But the little guy at high elevation stays small. But whereas you remember me saying that in Kenya, the stem was coded out genetically. So there was no stem. The flowers were coming right out. In the case of the Ethiopian ones shown on the right, they have stems, but they have the lazy gene. And that causes the stem to collapse. So it hugs the ground with long stems. Same species, Arabidopsis thaliana, unbelievable variation. So if we look at some preliminary genetic work done by Porrick Flood and his team from the Max Planck Institute, we see that this clade on the bottom on the left-hand side, that clade is the African clade. And it has more diversity than much of the rest of it, meaning that guess where the origin of the plant was? Africa. Arabidopsis thaliana is the model organism used throughout the world, meaning it's the rat of the plant worlds. We know more about it than any other plant. And we've got the most diversity right here in Africa. So I want to leave the talk on that note, showing how the plants that are high up, low down, have the highest reach, and the ones that are higher up in altitude are the shortest plants. And I want to leave you with that thought, because it gives you that soupçon that these plants are having to stay in these incredible environments. These environments are being threatened by climate change. And we're going out on this journey, unknown ahead of us, in order to discover. It's an age-old thing. Been thousands of years that mankind has been going out and discovering. And all of you sitting here have it in you to know, to understand, to document plants. And we're at an age where you're at an absolute pinnacle of your ability to go out and document and learn plants. And Casabio has put the etymologies for more than 50% of Africa's plant species on, meaning you can find out the names of those plants. We've also got the books. I want to thank Alex. Where's Alex? At the back. Alex is our programmer for Casabio.org, and he spent a really long time for the last 2 years. Has it been 2 years, Alex? Not yet. Coming up for 2 years, working on the Casabio website together with Craig Peacock. And today we got the books. So there's now nearly 50 books with pictures of each species of African plant online. More than 10,000 species represented on Casabio.org. So this is the kind of work we're doing. We're going to integrate descriptions and ultimately medicinal uses of the plants. Today, SABC called me because 2 children were either killed, I don't know, by eating oleander plants. This is the sort of thing that could be avoided by having a system where you can log in, identify the plant, and see what the remedy is. But the Bill Gates Foundation decided that this was not something they were prepared to fund. So apologies to these 2 poor kids who may not have survived. But yeah, so amazing knowledge, amazing ability, and thank you all for coming and supporting myself, Shireen, Chris and Sarah on our journey, and thank you for supporting Casabio ultimately. I'd love to get to know you all more, but certainly in 3 years' time, if not later tonight.